where did the origins from vampires come from? And so in my research and my wild imagination, I took it all the way back to Cain and Abel. And
Oh,
I do
wow.
believe that Cain was the original vampire. And well, actually, I believe he became a vampire. I believe Lilith was the first vampire. And in my book,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
I
and
like
I mean,
that.
actually, there is some historical evidence to substantiate that, But when Cain was cast out into the desert, and he was branded the Cain, the mark of Cain, who was he supposed to be protected from? Who else was in the desert if it was just Cain and Abel?
Right.
Well, you know who was in the desert? Lilith.
Welcome back to the AI Jupiter. I'm your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on DA Wysong, and we're going to get into vampires. She is an author of many, many books and a very, very well deep, how would you say it? Like a well thought out, well read, well detailed author, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We met for 5 minutes and hit it off in the back in the green room, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you keep coming back to the show, please do me a favor, like and subscribe. If it's your first time here, do the same, and if you already have, make sure that you still are, because sometimes YouTube likes to play games with people who try to get people closer to the truth, whatever that may be. So all the links are down in the description below. If you want to become a member and get episodes early, there's link that link is down there. And anything over an hour, there's also another link for that. So all the business out of the way, let's welcome DA Wysong.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for accepting my invitation. So we were talking about where we're at. You're in the States somewhere. We haven't figured that out yet, but it's not important.
I'm in
Nice.
northern Kentucky, just for the record, about a mile away from Bobby Mackey's.
Okay, it's Northern Kentucky. Oh, so that's right. So you wouldn't be that far from the LVO. You were telling me that you're going to go out there this
About
year,
4 hours away.
4 hours away. Right.
Hmm.
So Jody Cooks got me in touch with you. He's the president of the North American Dogman Project. He's like, you gotta talk to her, and I was like, okay, she knows a lot about this and vampire. I was okay. So, Da, please do me a favor. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
I am D.A. Wysong, and I'm a paranormal writer and a researcher. And I am getting ready to release my 58th book, which is the 25th book of the Monster Hunters of America series in May 31st, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be hunting for tulpas. And
Oh,
the monster hunters will be heading to Tibet. So I'm pretty excited about that. I got some new projects coming up, starting in the summer. My first paranormal romance, which will be Darkness Brewing. I have another book that's going to be coming up that is a collection of short stories of horror called Anthology of Madness. And I have a third one I like to keep it going on the table. Another author and friend, John Vandeventer, and I will be collaborating on a book called Jinn, which will be stationed over in Iraq with the Stargates and the
okay.
all that going on. So we're
Mhm.
pretty excited about that. And you can find my books like on Amazon, Joseph F., Barnes and Noble, expanded distribution. You can get them like on sale if you find the right place,
Mhm.
and a couple local bookstores. They're in libraries too. So
Whoa. So just go ahead and guys, I'll put the links down in the description below. That's you can also look it up on YouTube or not. I'm sure YouTube probably too, but on you just go Google it up. D.A.Y song. Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today? You're so well versed is the word I was looking
yes, I
for when
mean,
I was introducing you. I was
yeah, I
introducing
mean, the
you.
vampires sound great. Yes, last night I did a show with Bigfoot Michigan Rob and Krista. We talked about basically cryptozoology in general and my new book that's coming out for hunting for tulpas. But I really do put books out. Like this is the 25th book of this series, and really it's basically been a book a month So this one that I'm writing right now is probably the biggest one out of the series, and so it's taken me 2 months to
Oh.
write. But only a couple months ago, I wrote a book on vampires, the Jewett City vampires, and then a couple months later, I wrote one on chupacabra, which I have some pretty interesting insight tying those two subjects together. Believe it or
Interesting. I'd love to hear that. Okay,
yeah, but
let's let's do a little bit more of a deep dive if you don't mind.
no, no
How did
problem.
this all start for you? What is your, I guess people would say the occult, which is a soiled word, which basically means the unknown or the hidden. Hidden is better said. What got you, where did you start that, and how did was there an incident, or is just a
Well,
general
it's
interest?
interesting. I think, well, believe it or not, I grew up as a daughter of a deacon. And so I was brought up, raised pretty conservative and pretty religious, but I bucked it from 8 years old on. I was stuck down in the parlor because I'd ask questions like, such as, if Adam and Eve were the only man and woman, they had two men, how did that work? How did the procreation things? They're like, we need to tuck her away. So early on, I was always asking questions, diving deeper. Nobody really knew how to answer me. And back then, they just didn't have the readily available material to buy in books or YouTube, or, they just didn't have anything like that. So I had to go kind of within and search for those answers. So I do believe it is somewhat, into the occult, which my father, being the deacon, definitely thought anything I did manage to bring home from the library or something, it was the devil. And I didn't buy into any of that. I like to use the word esoteric
Okay.
or but then it does cross. I mean, it's all blends in, and there's a lot of blur there.
Hmm.
But the main thing is I just like the unknown. I like the
Yes.
the surface. I want to go down in the rabbit hole so freaking deep that you can't
Yeah.
go any further.
I want to go into the basement, into the corners to see what's there. That's
That's what
me.
I
I'm the
want.
same person. Yeah.
That's what I want. And I think what kind of topped it off with just who I was, as a person or a child, was that um well, they didn't call it paranormal activity then. I just started, I always had weird stuff happening to me. Like I was astral projecting by the age of 5. I thought everybody did it. It was so natural. If I tried to explain what I was doing, because at the time we didn't know that was astral projection, but it
Okay.
was. And then I found out later it runs in the family, just so you know.
Oh,
And so on. And I would just have like ghostly encounters. It wasn't like I really ever thought that I grew up in a haunted house. I think it was basically more me wherever I went. It wasn't the location, it was just wherever I went, I had those kind of experiences. And then when I got out on my own as a as a teenager and young adult, it just seemed to accelerate. Then it really got into some really intense um experiences, which I guess I always just, I was just busy raising kids, raising, doing the
right.
family thing, and busy, just being a young adult. And so I always knew that I would probably one day write, but I didn't set out like I'm going to be this, paranormal author and I'm going to write about this and that. So eventually, I guess by the time I really just sat down and decided I was going to write, it's the process for me. It comes out, starts with a title, and then I get an image, and then I actually have my illustrator for most of my books is in Mexico. His name's Jorge, and he just like reads my mind. I can explain to him what I want, and he just like within 2 days he has it for me. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
so
So
I
you
end
kind
up
of go with
having
the,
like all the covers and all the, titles. I've got it like tucked away. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to write about vampires this month. And then I just pull the cover out and I just sit down and I start writing. I have
right, so
no
like
idea
the,
what I'm going to write about.
so the title kind of comes from the subconscious of like, oh, that's interesting. Boom, there's the title, and then you go, yeah, I know exactly, if I understand that right. For me, like it's a feel, like when I write music, it's a feeling. And I
Yeah.
go, yeah, this is this, and then it could be the middle of it or the end of it, or at least okay, this part and this part. Wow, they fit together.
Right.
cool. And then you start going from there. Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
There's nothing like the creative process. You know, the writers and creatives do things all they have their own process, but I'm that writer that never sits down. I might get a name for a character, but I don't have an outline and I don't know what's going to happen until I'm writing it.
Okay.
So,
So kind of like, excuse me, you caught me in the middle of a bad time.
you're fine.
So kind of like a jazz writer.
I guess. I don't know. I never
Just,
think you would
just
say
go
that,
with the
but
flow.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
It's a joke from a friend of mine.
I do like jazz.
Fantastic. It was just you caught me right in the middle. I was like, oh, I gotta talk here. Yeah,
You're fine.
oh, I know. I'm not worried about it. This is what I do, man. It's you know,
Right.
everyone can talk to anybody about anything, but I am kind of, you know, the what people kind of come to see, of course, in who I interview. So me messing up is just par for the course and awesome. If anything, I'll get a couple of laughs or, hey, did you see him trip?
Yeah.
Let's go back and look
Yeah.
at him do that again.
Heck yeah.
All right, so vampires. So last month's book or the month before last, if I follow correctly.
I
So
think it was 5 months ago I did the vampire book, but
okay,
it was
so
the
did you
Jewett City vampires.
Jewett City? So this was a research project as well, where you had to look into things, or
I'm an extensive so I don't consider myself just an author. I am a very extensive researcher.
okay,
Um, and so when I do, before I start writing, my process is I start getting ideas like vampire. I'm just going to go, I don't know what I'm looking for, but that's when I remember the story of Mercy Brown, and I remember the tuberculosis and the consumption. And that's how I actually got the title for Jewett City. I just thought it was fascinating and wondered if there really was some substance to that. You know what I mean?
substance,
Uh,
yes,
yeah. Which as I went down the rabbit hole with that and actually touched base with a couple other authors too. Well, my one friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll, which would be a great guy
Oh, I
to have.
know him. I've had him
Yeah.
on.
Well, he wrote the foreword for that, and he actually has had encounters with vampires, like real life vampires.
Yes, he's the one. He experienced a vampire. Actually, he's the other person I talked to vampires about. He experienced one in South Carolina, Savannah.
Yeah.
Savannah. Yeah, I've spoken to him. He is incredible. Yes, of course.
So, when I started getting into that particular area, and I think it's just the way my brain thinks, or because I'm always wanting to dig deeper for the truth. So, as I did that, so I consider it fiction, historical fiction. So that's why, because I'm researching, everything is spot on with the history part. And
Hmm.
I do it really for my own protection and say it's fiction. I like to stay alive, you know
I
what I
got you.
mean?
I got you. That's very
Yeah.
intelligent. So you make a solid foundation of the concept. That way, if someone were to actually research it, would go, "Oh, wait a minute, there is a cemetery on the east side of
Oh yeah.
town
Oh yeah.
that is from the
Absolutely.
1600s, or etc." And
Oh
then
yeah.
you just
Yeah.
kind
I
of
can
go,
cross reference, and anything and everything that's in the book historically is spot on.
"Oh,
It's
that's
just
cool."
I weave the characters into that present day.
Right. I
Yeah.
like that. That's a cool way of going about that.
Yeah.
Never even
So,
thought about that.
I do think that they were vampires. I mean, I know that tuberculosis was going on in the consumption, but just like the story with Mercy Brown, I mean, there was still, blood in her heart. And I do believe that she was probably a vampire. And the question, I think, because that was the preliminary first part of the book, and as I dug down deeper into the subject, where are the origins come from? You know what I mean? Because we are so uh, brainwashed into thinking whatever we watch on TV or a movie, that's the way that it is. But that's the Hollywood version of what a vampire is. You know what I mean?
Right?
And where did the origins from vampires come from? And so in my research and my wild imagination, I took it all the way back to Cain and Abel. And
Oh
I do
wow.
believe that Cain was the original vampire. And well, actually, I believe he became a vampire. I believe Lilith was the first vampire. And in my book,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
I
and
like
I mean
that.
actually there is some historical evidence to substantiate that, because of, you got to realize we got Hebrew that we're into, we're the translation that comes out. But when, in that little thing that I was talking about, what if it's Cain and Abel and there's no females, but when Cain was cast out into the desert and he was branded, the Cain, the mark of Cain, who was he supposed to be protected from? Who else was in the desert if it was just Cain and Abel?
Right.
Well, you know who was in the desert? Lilith, in my book anyway. And I do think that there is some things that point to that this could have very well been a real thing. And of course, you can imagine Cain lost in the wilderness and he comes across Lilith, and Lilith introduces him to blood and drinks from the goblet, which was her blood. And I think that that was the onset of that. Now, when you go further into the book of Enoch, um, Cain went and built the city of Enoch. And if you go look into that translation, guess what it is? The city of vampires is what a modern day translation is. So he
Okay.
basically went and just took all the wayward people. And I believe, well, in my book anyway, he turned them. So you got a group of vampires then. And I don't think it's the kind of vampires that we're seeing on, you know,
The movies,
interview with
yeah.
a vampire. Well, kind of
Okay.
interview with a vampire kind of would have something somewhat like that. Because I do think they're most of them are aristocratic. Somehow they get money and sometimes they live pretty well. You know what I mean? And they can
Yeah.
see
Okay.
behind the shadows. But that is where I do believe the original um I think he was the original vampire, him and Lilith. Now, when you go back into the book of Enoch, when you read the story of the fallen angels,
Yes.
that's what I'm going to
Yeah.
go with.
I'm not a big Bible buff by any stretch of the amount. I'm not even really
Well, let me just enlighten you. The
book of
Watchers,
Enoch is,
which
and I
were
do
the
know the Watchers, and I also know the Nephilim. I know what they are.
yeah, so the
Hmm.
Watchers and the fallen angels. The reason why the book of Enoch wasn't in the Bible was because it didn't correlate with the canon. It didn't go with the church's teachings. They didn't like talking about the fallen angels and
Are you talking
breed.
about the Council of Nicaea? Is that what you're talking
Yes, they
about?
didn't
Okay.
want
Mhm.
to have that, human connection, human women, and they didn't want to talk about that or acknowledge it.
Okay. There's a
But
lot
that
of that.
is where the Nephilim come from. And so when you look up the characteristics of the Nephilim, they're cannibalistic. They suck blood, they eat flesh. So what does that sound like? It's a vampire.
Good. This is
So
going to ruffle some feathers. Actually, I have an interesting question.
yeah,
It's kind of on topic, but a little bit to the side. And I don't mean to. If anyone out there is religious, I don't want you to feel that I'm, shitting on you for lack of a better word. Um, when Jesus said, "Drink of this, for it is my blood, and eat of this, for it is my flesh." That's always been a part of me within that religious faith that makes me kind of not want to
cringe.
be part of that. Where it's like, I'm
Yeah.
cool, bro. I like all the other stuff, love thy
Well,
neighbor,
that's
and
funny
but
because when I wrote one of my Creeper Keepers was the time travel in the Knights Templar, and I
mm,
started that out where he actually is down around Red River Gorge. This boy in the book, which was based on one of my grandsons, Jesse James, and he walks in through this portal. But anyway, he ends up in France, where where all the mother, where the Mary Magdalene churches are, the
yep.
Cathar country, Montsegur, and where all the caves were, where, Mary was supposed to be and everything. And so there's a scene in that where he is outside the Catholic Church and he's looking through the window and he's witnessing them taking the Eucharist, but it isn't wine and it isn't wafers, it's flesh and blood. So I kind of put that theme of vampirism into the Roman Catholic Church because they're the ones that actually burnt the Cathars to the ground because they wouldn't participate in the Eucharist because that's what their belief was,
Wait a
that
minute.
they were cannibals.
The Cathars were a person, were a people.
Yes.
Okay, you wake me up. Okay, I'm here to be
The
awakened.
Cathars
Yeah.
were considered the perfect ones, and they were really um they this is like at the 1200s. Do you know the filmmaker Richard Stanley with
It
Color Out
rings
of
a bell for
Space?
sure. Say it
Okay,
again.
that's where he lives, and he's an historian, and I'm fascinated with him, and I've learned a lot from him. There, check out his documentary, The Other Worlds. You're going to be wanting to go to France. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Uh,
Trusty notebook.
yeah, but anyway, yeah. So, I forgot. I lost my train of thought now. But help me out. What
You
was I?
were we were in France and we were talking about the Cathars.
Yes,
The
yes.
Cathars.
So the Cathars, they literally wouldn't. They refused. They though they are Gnostic, so they followed the Gnostic
Yeah.
God.
Oh, that's who they were. I
And
know the Gnostics. I didn't know they were called the Cathars.
no, they weren't. They were just a sect of believers that followed the
Well,
Gnostic
that were Gnostic. Okay.
teaching.
Okay. Okay.
But the Catholic Church was very threatened by the Cathars because they were very peace loving. And guess what? They gave homage to women. Women were their equals in the 1200s, which is completely against what the Catholic Church taught, too. So they
Hmm.
bucked the system. They didn't fight them, they just weren't going to be compliant with it. So they just, I think actually at that time when they were burned to the stake, the woman was the leader, which you just didn't back, especially in the 1200s. That just didn't happen. But it was all over ultimately because they wouldn't participate in the Eucharist. So in my Knights Templar and time travel in the Knights Templar, I brought that history into that storyline.
Wow. So you like to pull and tease and pull apart and
Oh
mess with.
yeah.
So you
And
like to
they
throw a
end
lot of
up, that's
jabs.
what they end up in Scotland. They end
Uh-huh.
up in Scotland where the Knights Templar also were burned at the stake. So
Wow. So I knew that.
yeah.
So like to understand, so I know Gnostic is like truth that you understand or that you figure out through time, and but the Catholics and it's more one is revealed truth through the Bible, and the other one is true truth or something of that nature.
Yeah,
Correct?
I think the Gnostic
To know
Bible,
Gnostic knowledge, that's where it comes from.
the Gnostic just means hidden. It means
Ooh.
hidden and not in the light because they want it suppressed because they
Hmm.
do believe in Jesus, but it's not the Jesus that the church today believes in. I mean,
Wow.
because you go back in the church, for 200 years is completely a different church than what it was after his death and
Of
crucifixion.
course.
But yeah, so it was more like based on those days, that teachings, and I would consider that esoteric knowledge, hidden knowledge, that is where you read it and it's like that makes perfect sense. It's like an inner knowing, like that really connects with what
There's a
I'm
lot of teachings. Yeah, there's a lot of teachings. Like, there's a book that I bought, but I never got to read it until I moved, and then I moved to Mexico. It's called the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross
I've
by
heard that
John
one.
M. Allegro, and it's based on the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they
Yeah.
found some extra ones in the '60s, I think it was, and they
Hmm.
had a bunch of like Catholic or religious teachers could read it, and this one guy knew it. They said it's religious. He goes, no, it's Jesus. Actually, the original name is a mushroom covered in God's semen. It's like it's fertility rituals hidden within the psychedelics of the Ananita muscaria mushroom. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah, we've got
whoa,
yeah, we got such a whitewashed
version of all of it.
version
Yeah,
of everything. Just like even with Mary Magdalene with Easter just passing. And I have 6 grown children and 17 grandchildren, and I'm getting ready to have my 5th great grandchild. So I get to kind of drop my little ideas. I never, they just, everybody has their own, eclectic beliefs and stuff, but it's really cool because a couple of them are real sticklers, not many of them, but they do believe that. I believe it like it's exactly the way it is in there. Most of us don't think that in the family, but there's like one or two. But just like Mary Magdalene, when you go into that, she was at the foot of the cross, and so she had to
okay.
be the wife. If he was a rabbi, he had to be married. And a lot of people don't give her credit. She was the first one that when he appeared from the cave. You know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
reason for that, but they branded her as a scarlet whore when really she was an initiate from the Temple of Isis, and that was part of what she was doing for him, like after the cave and getting preparing his body and all that. That was what she learned from the Temple of Isis. She was an initiate. She was a high priestess. So it's just that is milk. I mean, they that's like no version of the truth is in the Bible today. You know what I mean? But you will
Right.
find those things in the Gnostic teachings.
Yeah, which is good. If you do that, then you're considered a heretic. So that's what they do. So when it comes to any of these things, I'm not saying it's real because I don't believe it. Like, say just the worst example, like flat Earth. If you say that, you are now a crazy person. Instead of like
Right.
looking into it for yourself or believing that Jupiter exists and actually looking through a telescope, they go, "Oh, he's a crazy person," or "Oh, they're a vaccine denier." And it's
Right.
like, dude, this is the modern day witch hunt. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
And you know
we're
what?
we don't even talk about vampires. I'm loving it. This is great.
They're
It
not
goes wherever
burning
it
them at the
goes.
cross no more. They're just mysteriously dying now.
Oh yes, oh yes, or unalive somehow. Yes, that is some new things that is happening. Oh, and or you could be a president who reminisced when being brought up about a certain island in a certain place. You can go, oh yeah, and kind of smile, and nothing happens. It's like
And you know what? It's funny that you
nothing.
bring that island up because
Oh,
my
okay.
next thing down the rabbit hole with that particular book is I actually weaved the vampire like the 13 bloodlines into that Jewett City. I wasn't finished yet with that one. So I put
Ooh,
in the 13 bloodlines, which you're gonna love this. Traces back to the list of fallen angels, their names. It
okay.
actually goes back to, I think it's in Genesis 1:6, maybe. Don't quote me on that, but it's right at the beginning. And so those bloodlines are connected to the fallen angels, which the Nephilim was the product of.
Right.
So that then we've already established that they were cannibals. So why not, if a Nephilim
Oh
really
wow.
existed and had human DNA? That's where I believe that and trace where vampirism comes from. It's that bloodline, and it's encircled in there. So in my book, Monster Hunters of America, which I think that was book 14 or 15, they have a new CIA director because the Monster Hunters are actually work for a covert, uh, 3 letter agency that goes out kind of like X Files, but they go out and they establish whether this particular cryptid or monster is really a thing, and then that's what their job is. They hunt for them. And so there's a vampire that is the last name of Aster, which there is 13 names that trace back to the Nephilim.
Aster. That's such a. What do you make of that temple that was on that island?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to be. Do you know who James Bartley is with the Cosmic Switchboard?
Oh, but there's so many names to remember. It's
Well,
impossible.
check him out because he's actually really, oh my gosh, he's going to be writing the foreword for my books, Soul Snatchers, which is the reptilian agenda. And I told him, he said, well, what do you want me to, what's this going to be about? I told him basically, but I'm tying that into Epstein Island.
James, what's his last name again?
Bartley.
Bartley. Okay.
Yes, he's actually seen them underground. And he has a show
Reptilians.
called the Cosmic Switchboard. He's a real deal. He's up there with Laura Eisenhower and stuff. He's like they do conferences across the country and stuff like that.
Okay.
Probably outside the country by now.
That's such a fun place to go to that I haven't gone down that direction to ask anybody about these kind of things. And it, awesome, thanks. I gotta get my pencil sharpener out
Sure,
here.
no problem. No problem. But anyway, so in the 13 bloodlines, I traced it back. So, of course, they implement the powers that be. They strategically place different people in different sectors of the world to control. Uh, so that is kind of the direction of where the Jewett City Vampire went into and ended. And I very much show, and the thing that we got to think about, like if per se this is like a subspecies of being a human, a
Okay.
vampire.
Okay.
But then they could their one of their characteristics, especially according to Dr. Dennis Carroll, is that they are master shapeshifters and they're hypnotic. So it's not that they're just maybe they're looking like they really are, but they can perceive our the way we see them, like a reptilian would. A reptilian can they're not really shape shifting. They're really they're really controlling the perception that we see them through the eyes that they're human. And I think it's the same way with vampires, which brings me to the connection. This is through my own research, is that if you sit down and you write the characteristic of reptilian agenda, if you sit down and you write the characteristics on white paper and you do that with a vampire, and then you go over to the island and you write the characteristics of what's coming in the files, guess what?
They
They
match
all
up.
have the same exact
Yeah.
pattern. We just have different names for it.
So when we're thinking vampires, we're thinking, okay, so when we're thinking vampires, because of the manipulation that we go through, we're thinking of like pale skin, long fangs, bats flying around, but there might be something more closely connected to like
Humans,
a human, but but evil, maybe like demonic and like
nefarious. Well,
yeah, and
yeah,
kind of
because
like a
Lilith was a demon. Yeah, Lilith was a demon. And guess
Mhm.
what? If you go back to Mesopotamia and Babylon and the teachings and the writings about Lilith, that's what she did. She took night emissions from men and she sucked blood. That is a characteristic. That's a characteristic of a vampire, and it just so happens even in Dracula, it's all about seduction. It's about seduction and lure.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It is. They leave that part in there because it's very good because sex and violence sells. So they put that in
Well,
there
I
to
do
make sure
think
you go, ooh.
there's truth to that too. Just like David Wilcock said on his really last thing that he surprisingly uh decided to come on and say, is that, and he's been known to say this is why I love David Wilcock. I'm just literally devastated about his passing. I'm infuriated because I know he didn't take his own life. There's just no way. He just had happened to do just a pop-up kind of little reel, but he was explaining how the powers that be, they have they have to play a game. They have to show us to
Mhm.
reveal their intentions. So what better way to do it through a vampire movie, or you know what I mean, or the way that it's written, or a book or something like that.
You hear that all the time. So if you hear 3 knocks on your door, you say, "Who is it?" That's like inviting them in. They have to show you, and they put it in the music too. I thought at the beginning of that that it was all BS, and when I started looking, it was actually quite shocking of what this is. Like it got. We were looking. I don't know this music. Like I grew up. I'm 46. So the last like my last pop stars are like Christina Aguilera and whoever that was at that time, Britney Spears. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I was looking at one of her videos with my girlfriend. I was like, this is really sexual. And she's like, you should see the stuff today. And I go, what? And she shows me like a Nicki Minaj, and it is low frequency,
Oh, absolutely.
hypersexual, the dumbing down. The children nowadays can't even write anymore because they're all on AI. I don't know what is
You
going.
know what's
Cursive
funny
is gone.
Yeah, you know what's funny is my middle daughter just told my 12-year-old grandson that she said, "Why are you talking like that? You're talking so monotone." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "As a matter of fact, everybody at that age talks like that because that's how AI's talking and that's what their
Yes.
influence is."
Oh my god! I got to do a whole show on that. I got to do a whole show on that. They were talking about they don't they're there was these like school teachers. They're like, hey, I'm an 8th grade teacher, and I got to tell you, I have whatever 40 students, whatever, and I can only tell you 2 read at an 8th grade level. The rest are 5th grade and below.
I homeschooled my kids,
I'm
so
doing that right now.
that's
I'm doing
really a
it.
good thing to do.
I'm doing it right now. So it's a lot of work, but in the end, you don't. I'm a big fan of that too. You don't tell them what to think. You teach them how to think.
How
To
to
even
think.
second guess what I say to you. Bring up
That's how I did
a
my
good
kids
point of
and
approach.
my grandkids. I wanted
Well,
them to
there's
have
always one.
thinking skills.
Exactly. There's always a line where you have to go, look, I have more experience than you. I've been born longer than you, so you have to listen to me. And later you get to tell your kids. But for right now, please put on the helmet or whatever. I'm not saying helmets, but please
Right.
listen to me now. Clean your room is important.
I agree. I totally agree. And we did book work, but we were very creative. Like we would do geography and I'd give them maps and we'd go to Florida. You know what I mean?
Oh,
We
yeah.
did.
Tell me which way to go.
Yeah, we did. When we got to Florida, we were doing scientific experiments with salt water. I mean, you can just be so creative and there's just so much stuff. And that's the hands-on stuff is what your kids will remember
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
want to
I
grow
do
and
that
live
all
and
the time.
learn
All the
more.
time. You
Yeah.
kind of go through their interests. Like she really likes puzzles.
Yeah.
So she's having a hard time with like reading, for example. I go, just think of it as a very complex puzzle. And I started breaking it down, prefix, suffix, this is, and just kind of, and now, I mean, she's shooting higher than kids her age, and her math has always been there. So that's just automatic
Well,
because
I
of her
have a
mom
couple
genes.
kids. A couple of my grandkids are in the gifted program, and they do have critical thinking skills. So thank God. You
We got
know
to
what
be careful with those programs too. I'm not saying anything, but I've
I know.
heard some stuff.
Yeah, she's
I'm sure
got
you're
most
aware
of
though.
my kids homeschooled, but the one that's gifted, the one that was talking monotone, but he's so talented, and I think he'll be okay. We have to build them resilient too. They have to learn how to decipher. Well, I'm just this is what I tell them. Just go along with what they say and know that this isn't the way it is, especially when it comes to history. He's actually one
Or
of the
tell them, write it
monster hunters
down,
in the
write it
book.
down, write it down, and write down what you disagree with it about. Then go look it up on multiple different angles and see if you were right or not.
Right.
But don't
He's
be
actually one of the main monster hunters. He's actually the scribe of the tribe.
okay. Cool. Shit. Oh wow. Where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, I did a book on chupacabra,
Okay, let's get
and
into it.
yeah, that was an interesting book. One of the questions Rob asked me last night is, writing all these books with all these different cryptids, has it changed does it made you more believe in cryptids more, or do maybe not believe in them? But I think I don't think that it's like any different on if I believe in them, because I do believe that they exist. But I think for me, writing these books have made me understand the origins a little bit more, and I'm pretty much an expert on all cryptids now, as well as how legends and the evolution of handing things down evolve, and that's something that we need to be very, very aware of, like we were just talking about with the vampire lore. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
So like the evolution of the telephone game. Is that what you're kind of saying? Something of that
Oh,
nature as well.
absolutely,
Okay.
100%. So, but when I went into research the chupacabra, and it's funny because the topics that I don't have very much that I can find on are my books that flow the best, because like Bigfoot was hard because there's so much to research, and that's actually what brought me into the cryptids. Was I think Bigfoot's just really cool, and I
Very
have a
cool.
lot of thoughts about Bigfoot. But when it came to the chupacabra, that
Very
was
cool.
cryptid that actually only surfaced in 1990.
Yeah.
There really was not. Ivan Sanderson actually made reference to the chupacabra when he was doing all of his. You know who Ivan Sanderson is, right?
You can. I know a lot of other people. Do you know who James Hetfield is?
Yes, I do, and I love his
Okay, cool.
music.
All
But
right, so
anyway, so
everyone,
Sanderson.
I don't know all these people. Everyone always says, "Do you know this person?" I go, "Nope."
Okay, well, you should know, you should Google him, because I think he started out in the 1930s. So he's like an original gangster of the cryptozoology before we called it cryptozoology.
Okay.
I actually think on Prime there's something called the Monster Files. And so these archives went missing, and he was really cool because he went out and explored. So he explored Bigfoot. He talked about, a creature that he termed as a chupacabra briefly. And I don't know where he got that term, but that was probably in the 40s or 50s. But that was the only reference that I could see. And then it turned out that it really wasn't the chupacabra that we know, like that happened in Puerto Rico. I mean, it's been known to frequent Mexico in parts, and basically Texas, Oklahoma, and maybe even Florida and Louisiana. So there was a military base that was in the heart of the jungle of Puerto Rico. And so I am one of those researchers that believe, especially like with Dogman and with Chupacabra, those two cryptids in general, I believe are the product of experimentation from the military. And I do believe that the Chupacabra was a smorgasbord of, gene pool, because a couple of the doctors and that were scientists were actually at that location. And when they finally closed that location down, they ended up moving all the files and everything to Florida, which was where the alien graves were supposed to be. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Okay.
Where Nixon went down there and saw with Jackie Gleason that Air Force base right there, which was in South Florida, outside of Miami. But back to
Whoa.
Puerto Rico, they did some really horrible things to the people in Puerto Rico. That's where Agent Orange originated. That was the first experimentation, was all over Puerto Rico. And when you start getting into the history of Puerto Rico, I really feel bad for the people there, because they don't have any rights, but yet we control them. I just think it's really a messed up situation. So what a better place to go and plant a military base in the heart of a jungle where nobody's going to say a damn thing to you, because they're at their mercy already. And I do believe that they took probably my research brought me to 5 different specimens for the gene pool. And I think it was reptilian, alien gray, human, possible vampire, if not a vampire bat, and some other, I don't know what the other thing is. I don't know, but they're very vicious, and they stand about 3 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
And they are cannibalistic, and that's why I do believe I think that there really is a species of a vampire. So I'm going with vampire, but another researcher would probably really indicate that there was at least a vampire bat, because of the way that the markings are on the bodies and stuff. But I find it interesting that these chupacabras just out of the blue showed up in the 90s, and then within a couple years they were seen in Texas. So that thing that was in Texas where that veterinarian, stuffed it and it was out, that I don't think that when people think of a chupacabra, some people think of that's not the kind of chupacabra I'm talking about. I'm talking about and I think that was probably maybe another genetic experiment, because if you look at it, it doesn't look right. You know what I'm talking about, where it's just hairless.
I'm going to pull up some pictures here. You can kind of direct me here.
Yeah. So the chupacabra that I wrote about was the one that stood bipedal and had the spikes on the back.
This one here? This one here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like, it's really funny. I looked at because I knew the words. I knew the word chupa and I know the word cabra. So it means the sucking goat.
Right. And they do.
So cabra is goat and chupa is the suck. Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any validation to it, but I find it interesting that they prefer goats, because it makes me wonder, is there some kind of an antibody in the goat's blood that they prefer? They will suck the blood out of anything, but what I really find interesting is you've never seen a report of them doing that to a human. It's always animals, which I find interesting. But the chupacabra is a pretty vicious creature. In my book, I had them stow away, and on different trucks or military cargo and stuff like that, and that's how they distribute it out. So they would have to procreate. But you got to realize the people that were when I really did the real research on it, with people that were doing the gene pools back in the 90s, that's when they started doing it, and they started winning all these prizes and stuff, like Harvard and stuff.
Oh, when they did Dolly, when Dolly came out, the sheep, right?
It was even before that, but when you go
back, the one that we knew of.
Yeah, when you go back into the names of those doctors, you can trace that lineage to Plum Island, which
Plum
is in
Island.
my first book, my
Plum Island.
second book, Unleashed,
Isn't
which
it
is
the Plum Island? Where's that at again? Isn't it?
New York. So let me just refresh you. So in my first book in Monster Hunters, Rise of the Cryptids, the protagonist is the Monster Hunter's grandmother, Deanna Robertson. She was born in Germany right during, she was commissioned by Adolf Hitler. So it comes from Nazi German roots. So
Okay.
and it's still 4 years later, it's still always on the top 50. The first two books are always the top bestseller number, 10, 2, whatever. And then when she flees to America to give intel to the OSI, which was the original 3-letter agency before the CIA, because this is during the end of World War II. Then they commission her because she's telling all these atrocities that are taking place over in Germany with Hitler.
Mhm.
And then when she comes to be commissioned with the OSI, her first case is Roswell. She realizes that they're all in cahoots together, because when the war ended, there was a couple people that were tried, and
Yeah, only
imprisoned,
seven.
but
Seven were.
the majority of them, that's where Project Paperclip comes in.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, this is now we're in my ballpark of a little bit of stuff. Yeah, South
yeah.
America. I want you guys to go back and look at the Nuremberg trials and see what is actually written in there, and then go ahead and connect that to 2020 and tell me if you still feel like you are free, and then or was it just a dog and pony show and now just shut up and take it?
Oh, absolutely.
That's exactly what that was.
I mean, after doing, what's so wild about when I write?
I
A lot of things
love the
wild when I write.
enthusiasm.
I'm in my own little world. I don't come up. Sometimes I'll write 10 to 12 hours a day, and I don't come out of the house for a week sometimes, because I have to do that to focus and just block everything else out. But when I was writing Unleashed, when I finished that book, I can't make this up. 10 minutes after I wrote the last word, it was in July, and it was the 13th. And I remember that day because it was my niece's birthday. And I opened my laptop and got on X. And the way that I ended my book was very similar to what had just transpired. And it was when Trump got attempted assassination. Within 10 minutes of finishing writing that book. And the last chapter was the JFK assassination. And there was the correlation of what that was behind, which I do believe it had to do with MK mind control. But anyway, back to
you are beautifully all over the map. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I can grab a couple straws where you're like, yeah. Project Paperclip, the Nazis, the rocket, yeah. The Russians took their own, yeah. I got you, Nuremberg, yeah. And then you go, you were thinking, like you were saying at Puerto Rico with the thing. I was like, okay, what about the Lone Star tick and then Lyme disease? That's also another,
The Lyme disease came from Plum Island. Do you know that, right?
Do you? I think I've heard that. Yes.
That's what my point was, why I took it to Plum Island. So when I traced these particular scientists and stuff that were winning these prizes, you could see the origins tracing back to, were they Nazi? And they're not doing anything. I mean, so if I know that seems wild to a lot of normies, sure, right? They're really making these creatures up, really. I mean, Frankenstein was only how many years ago that they wrote, and they really were doing things like that back then. So why wouldn't you think that they're doing something even more nefarious? And they were doing it during World War II, and they haven't stopped.
Yeah, and then you're also you're writing this book about tulpas, and so basically a tulpa is, guys, is like when you think about it enough that it actually becomes reality, and that's so why not? So what they can do is they can do things like put that seed in your brain and say, a chupacabra exists. Look, it's here. Boo, it's there. It's there. Do. How did that? You get a couple, people from small towns and border towns.
Well,
You know, say Canada, and then next thing you know, they do
yeah,
exist.
I do believe the chupacabra is an experiment gone wild.
Hmm.
I do believe our biggest, so a tulpa is an individual that comes to manifestation. So if you go on a collective consciousness of a being, an entity, we would consider that an egregore. And I think the number one egregores that we are seeing today are the alien grays. And like I told Rob last night, how many versions of an alien gray do we have these days?
Like two or
It's
three at least.
evolved.
Yeah.
It's evolved, you know, and now everybody's talking about it. And the thing about tulpas, the things about egregores, the things about anything, manifestation, our life, us, whatever, the more attention, which is our currency, is where it grows.
Have
So
you have you done anything? It'd be something that you might want to look into. I would love to see what you could make of it if it ever, you know, tickles your tizzle or makes you excited. What do you know about the Alux? ALUX. Have you heard of them?
you mean no? Go ahead and enlighten. I know what loosh is, but not the alush.
Alux is a Mayan. It's like a conjured being to protect corn, and they are definitely here. They're like a cherub entity, and or they were also referred to as the Aluxes, ALUEX. And whenever they put the trained Maya through here, there was a lot of them being seen. They come out of the caves. They make people sick. They protect the corn. They like to throw rocks. I've had rocks thrown at me in the forest here or in the jungle here.
Wow.
It is one of those ones that maybe something that would like something you could be interested. Just give you like a little,
Yeah.
like maybe in 10 years, you're like, ooh, that was something he said.
Well, I'll have to write that one down. I'm going to write that down. But I'm going to,
ALUXES.
yeah.
It's a Mayan word.
So I am going so I am going to finish this real quick because of the back to the chupacabra. So
I'm sorry.
you got these, you know, it's basically, you know, just like where the mRNA shot came from. It was just the mixture of genes. That was the whole basis of that. But they were playing around with it back in the 90s. And so when I traced it back to, you know, possibilities that there could be connections of Plum Island, that's exactly what they were doing, and that's where the Lyme disease came from. This particular scientist, and I can't, or he was a Nazi scientist. I think it was Goebel, but I'm not positive. So his forte was bioweaponry, and he loved insects. So he injected this Lyme disease into these ticks because what their thinking was, well, if we were in war and, you know, we were feeling compromised, then we could just go drop all these insects or ticks off into a place where they, you know, like the military was, like in the open field, and then they would start getting attacked by these ticks. And that's exactly the reason why it's called Lyme disease. It was Lyme, New York, where they experimented with these ticks.
Oh, okay. That's where the name. Okay,
That's how
that's
it
what you
got
mean.
the name. So why would we think that that's so bizarre that those same kind of doctors and scientists would go create a creature like a chupacabra? Why do we think that's so strange? Because that was what 70 years ago. You know that they're going to keep going, especially because there was so much of a big deal about these awards and these prizes of these scientists of making these breakthroughs with the gene pool and different, you know, I don't know all the scientific stuff unless I had it in front of me written down, but that was basically the beginning, the onslaught of RMNA.
Oh, God, dude, you're awesome. The tying of mRNA. Oh man, because that was the one for me where I went, wait a minute. I'm not a scientist, but I do know that RNA is the building blocks of DNA, which is
Yes.
what I'm made of, and you're going to use that to cure a disease. That
And
doesn't
that's
sound right.
right. And so when you go back into the 90s and I started researching scientists in general, that's when I started coming across that, which just added my fuel to my fire of my theory on chupacabras already. So why wouldn't you think that you could, you know, because I already believe that's what they do with Dog Man. I believe that there is a gene a hybridization of the dog man and human. I think
Mm.
that's why we're seeing so many different types.
I think there's I've talked about this a little bit at length. I think there's kind that are like possibly from outer space, according to Jody. He thinks they're possibly a down spacecraft, and they know about that. I think there's ones that could be here for a very long time, Anubis like, and then there's the ones that you're talking about, which is some type of hybridization of these. And I don't know, it's gotten scary, but I'm enjoying it. It's a very interesting time in history, isn't it?
Yes, and you have to remember about our government. If they can weaponize something, they're
Oh, they'll
going
do it.
to.
Oh yeah.
So if they came across these creatures that were dog man, why would
Hmm.
they try to weaponize them?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Weaponize everything.
Give some nunchucks to a woodchuck. I'm
Something like
sorry.
that.
That's
Yeah.
what I do. That's what I do.
Yes. With a woodchuck chuck.
Oh yeah. So I looked at it. Wasn't Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. So you're probably thinking of Joseph Mengele, maybe.
That's who it was. That's who it was. Yeah.
Right, right. I was because there's two of them. There's two Josephs, and they were both awful.
Yes.
He liked to work with twins and
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
And you got to
Yeah.
remember, that's just what we know of.
Right. Because they
And
were
that's
really
what
into the
people,
occult too. They were really into the
yes.
esoteric and
Oh,
the
they
occult
were.
too.
Well,
They were
you know what's
dark.
really fascinating? I've said this a couple times about my process, but when I'm doing the hunting for tulpas, uh, when I started, so I got these books, but I didn't really know what the order was going to be. I knew the first four, and then I knew tulpas was going to be last, and I just kind of filled in like a puzzle, blank, and just I want to write about Vampires Day, so here I'm going to pull this one out. But when it comes to the tulpas, most people don't realize. Well, some people do realize Hitler was very much into the occult.
Very much.
But a lot of people don't realize that he was also fascinated with tulpas. So
Didn't know
it's
that.
like a full circle that goes into the
I wonder
beginning.
what that's called. I would love because I actually read, write, and speak German, and I'm probably one of the few people you've ever interviewed that actually knows what Hitler's saying.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that one where he's yelling and screaming and all he's saying is vote for me.
I love that. I love
but
that.
he's just like, you know what I've done for you? I've bled for you. The things I have done for you. Now when you go in there and vote, you vote for my party. And that's what he says. So you know.
He also tried to warn the world that the Western the United States basically were cannibalistic. He
Oh, I
called
definitely
that
got to
out
cut
back
that.
in
I
the
got to definitely have
start.
to cut that word out.
Yeah,
We were
a
doing
lot of
so
people
well.
say a lot of people say that's why they wanted him gone.
Really interesting. And the really interesting thing is too, there's a famous video of him riding down the road on the back of a car when he made the first highway in Germany, the first Autobahn. I know exactly. I've been there a million times. I know
Really,
exactly where I've been.
you
Because of
would
him.
probably really enjoy Rise of the Cryptids because there is a lot of German history in that one.
Without him being a butthead, which is like a really understated fact, it's still funny to say though, my
Right?
daughter wouldn't exist because of him. Me being in the military, went to Germany, met my wife. So in a weird way,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
isn't that the weird thing about life that such darkness can come something so beautiful as a
Oh
child?
yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
but
And
it's just
so
a
it
weird
is.
way of looking at the angle of the world. But I think that's what you're trying to do, whether people agree with you or not. You've admitted openly that there's facts mixed in with your own ideas of fiction. So
And
that
I
you're
encourage
good.
people to take off with that and to formulate what their own beliefs are. That's what the
Write
world's
their own
about.
stories. Write their
Yeah,
own thing. Be
yeah.
creative with it. But at the same time, if someone asks you about the facts, you can say, "This is what I found. I enjoy that immensely." He's
Uh,
like, "This is what I found. I looked into it, but at the same time, know that this is also an artistic attempt that I'm enjoying. I'm just using the history as a through line, as a foundation in which I
right.
set all my chess pieces upon."
Well, I've had a lot of people when the books first started coming out was, I really love how adventurous this is and how you're exploring. So I ended up putting under the categories. You pick 3 on Amazon. So the number 1 is historical fiction, exploration, and discovery, and it's a best-selling series because there's sometimes I have 20 of the books on best-selling. It goes changes throughout every day, but of course, what's interesting is Rise of the Cryptids has been up there with The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, like maybe
Wow.
right underneath or right above. It just depends on what day it is.
Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Much more to that interview. There's a lot more to that interview. And if you want to see that, all you have to do is go down in the link below. It's a membership tier called Inside the Eye, and you get any, how will I say this? Any interview over an hour. You guys can go ahead and click on that, $8.99 a month. And of course, all silver membership tier levels and perks will be included. I hope to see you there. Go ahead and sign up. Link in the description below.